Hello, my friends. Friday was very exciting. As you saw, we released our latest book called Unsporting by Coach Linda Blade and Barbara Kay. I sure had fun chatting with them. Well, that was literally the day we announced the book. I think we made the announcement public actually mid-afternoon, like 3:30 or something. But by that evening, the book had literally hit #1 on the Amazon bestseller list for all of Canada. I think that might actually be the fastest we've ever had a book at Rebel News go to #1. I think it's just incredible. Now, knock on wood, as I told you on Friday, my book, China Virus, was an instant bestseller too, but then the Chinese embassy or whoever started a pressure campaign to have Amazon ban the book, which they did. And after we made a fuss, they unbanned it. I think there's a real chance that could happen to this book too, because we've seen it happen to others. But also because we see the campaign to ban us starting online already, but not from everyone. Interestingly, there are plenty of people who I think traditionally would be called on the left who support the book. I mean, pretty much anyone who would be called a feminist, until about 5 minutes ago, they would be concerned about the effect that trans women are having on biological women in sports. How can you see these images of big, burly, 200-pound plus, 6-foot guys who have transitioned to call themselves girls? How can you see them physically dominating women and girls and say, yeah, that's good sport. That's good sportsmanship. That's why the book's title is so great, Unsporting. It's against fair play. And in this case, this particularly kind of bad sportsmanship will have the effect of driving out women and girls from sport altogether. How can any feminist be fine with that? And this book, after all, is written by 2 women who care about women in sports. Look at this. This is from the LGB Alliance. That stands for Lesbians, Gays, and Bisexuals. Thrilled to see that the #1 best-selling book in Canada right now is Coach Blade and Barbara Kay's book, Look at Gender Ideology's Destruction of Women's Sport. The tide is turning quickly now. Canadians aren't buying this nonsense anymore. But then a hard left-wing journalist named Omar Moualem says, it doesn't bother you? The Rebel News and Ezra Levant are the publishers? Isn't that something? It may be a great book. It may be a book that stands up for girls. It may be the best-selling book in Canada, but some hard left-wing journalist who allegedly believes in free speech, I think, is chiding the gay and lesbian group, not with any real argument. It's assumed everyone knows why it's a bad thing to be published by Rebel News and Ezra Levant. You're associated with Ezra Levant and Reb News. Not even an argument. I mean, you either know or you don't know. You either get it or you don't get it. Don't you get it? You're not supposed to read anything published by Ezra Levant or Rebel News. There's no argument there. By the way, I didn't write the book. I did read it before it was published, but I wasn't even the editor of it. My role was encouraging Coach Linda and Barbara to write it and to make sure some of the wheels were set in motion. But imagine just because I helped move this book along. Really, I arranged for the cover and I arranged for people to edit it, things like that. I didn't touch on the content. Imagine because I was near it. That's a reason to blacklist it. That's the implication here. You're supposed to be bothered by the fact that we published it. Forget about what the book says. I mean, Omar Moualem obviously hadn't read the book by then. It just came out. I don't think he plans to. He just knew he was against it. Don't bother him with the facts. Talk about judging a book by its cover. Well, look at all the replies to him. The first from that lesbians and gay group again. No, because I know how to read words and evaluate ideas on their own merits, because I'm an adult. Ha! Good for them. So that no is in reply to Omar Moualem asking if they were bothered. And here's the next reply in a row. It bothers me that Levant and Rebel published the book. And it bothers me even more that when we had a situation in Vancouver where a person was grifting immigrant women of color using the Human Rights Tribunal, the same news outlets were covering it because the mainstream outlets refused. There's a void here. Isn't that interesting? She's talking about Jonathan Yaniv, who went by Jennifer Yaniv, who booked himself in to get bikini waxes by estheticians around Vancouver, most of whom were new immigrants. And Jonathan Yaniv wouldn't say that he actually has, male parts, twig and berries. And so when he would show up and they would refuse, he would take them to the Human Rights Commission claiming they were transphobic. And this person on Twitter is saying, yeah, it does bother me that the only people talking about that in the news were Rebel News. No one else was talking about these crazy things. That's a good answer. Here's another one. I'm just going through these. Exactly. The mainstream media have abandoned this issue out of fear, misogyny, willfully ignorance. Who knows, but people are starting to wake up from their wokeness. Personally, I think it's fear. Fear of being deplatformed, fear of fancy people saying, oh, you're not bothered that it was published by them. As in being socially marginalized, politically marginalized, commercially marginalized, maybe deplatformed on Twitter, companies not giving you a credit card, whatever. Yeah, it's fear. Fear of little thugs like Omar Mulem saying, oh, you don't want to be associated with them. You don't want to do business with them, do you? That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.